think it was 2 weeks ago. It was a little over 2 weeks, 2 weeks and 1 day ago that I actually had the blood test that alerted my doctor to the fact that something was wrong. And it's almost been 2 weeks since I found out that I had dengue fever. So as far as I know, I'm okay. I'm just exhausted. I've talked to a handful of people in town who've had it, and yeah, exhaustion is it's probably going to be another couple weeks before I actually get back, like, really on my feet. So as you can hear, my voice is still a little shot. Hopefully in a couple weeks I'll be back to normal. But I wanted to do a video today about what I consider to be the biggest mistake I would say that I've made so far in terms of just a miscalculation. Thinking about leaving the US, starting a life someplace else. So just to recap, I haven't officially done that yet because I'm here for a year. I have to go back to the US for one more year, and when I'm 62, that the plan is to move wherever it is that I decide that I would be happiest. Okay, so the biggest mistake I've made is not downsizing early enough. Not starting that process as soon as I had the idea that this was a possibility. And that would have been 9 years ago. At the time, I was a couple years out from a divorce. I still had a lot of financial issues connected to the divorce. I was very unhappy with a lot of things. I was in a bad spot. And that's when I began researching. How can I live? How can I retire? And how can I live a decent life? And I did realize right away that okay, I'm gonna have to solve these financial issues. There were other things in my life at that time that would have made it difficult to do right at that moment. So I knew that there was gonna be kind of a long planning period. But the one thing I didn't do, and the thing I'm still guilty of, is not being really aggressive in terms of downsizing. So a couple things I'll say is if you've accumulated a lot of stuff in your life, it's just the time factor becomes an issue, becomes a serious issue. Like right now, I'm out of the country for a year, so I can't really do anything. When I get back, I may have a year and 4 months to get rid of my stuff. That's not a lot of time, especially given the fact that I'll be working and doing a lot of other things. The other issue is that you leave a lot of money on the table if you get down to the wire and you decide you're just gonna get rid of all the stuff without trying to make some money on it. And it can be substantial money. So let me backtrack a little bit. I'm not 100% guilty of not downsizing at all. It's just that I'm not downsizing fast enough and I didn't start soon enough. So I basically have a couple of buckets worth of things in terms of what my life is comprised of, based on what my occupation is and a few other things and what my interests are. But I have a huge book collection, and I have a lot of collectible books, and you have to find the right market for that. Fortunately, a lot of my Facebook friends are the market because we do the same thing. A lot of us are professional writers or professional educators, and during the pandemic, I just began posting on Facebook and selling kind of the higher priced items. And by higher priced, I mean mostly stuff that was between $50 and $500. And it was selling. It was just people were just snapping it up. And I was pricing it less than what it was actually worth in terms of if somebody went online to buy it, they would see that mine was what I was selling it for was about 25% less than what it was worth because I wanted to move it. But it was a great way to begin kind of stockpiling some cash while also getting rid of a lot of these books. Now, I do have a sentimental attachment to the books. So that's what makes it incredibly difficult. The other thing that I have is I have a really large record collection. So also during the pandemic, I began posting the records on Discogs. The thing is that you have to have a knowledge, though, in terms of, and be realistic about certain things. Like, I know from friends of mine who own record stores that people will come in with stacks of what they think are valuable records that aren't valuable at all. Now, I've always had kind of a collector's mindset. So even if I'm not buying something specifically to collect, which is usually the case, I'm usually buying it just for myself, either to a book to read or a book as an artifact because I want a particular first edition that's signed by a particular writer that I like, or records that are difficult to find. It may have been a small pressing that Record Store Day did, but I'm completely realistic about what I have, what's valuable, what's not valuable. But it turned out that I was buying records at a good time. I was buying a lot of records at a time when people really hadn't started collecting them again. And so I would get like mint condition jazz records, great pressings, covers in great condition from the dollar bin. I mean, that's nuts. And a lot of those records, I mean, in some cases they might have been worth $25, $50, but they were basically worth exponentially more than what I paid for them. And that was the case with a lot of records that I owned. And even for like Record Store Day records, there might have been a record that I paid $20 for or $25 for. And then when I looked up its value on Discogs, I saw that it was selling for $600. And so I would sell it for $500, or it might have been selling for $400. And so I would sell it for $300. I was making so much money for a couple of months in terms of just selling my records and feeling really good about it, because I think one of the things that worried me is it's like, man, I spent all this money on all of these records over the years, and am I going to get any money back out of it? And it turns out that I was getting literally exponentially more than what I paid. I remember there was a box set, without going into like detail about it, but it was like it was something that I paid probably a couple $100 for at a time when a couple $100 seemed like a lot of money to pay for something it was a little excessive. I sold it for $1,500. Now the problem is this: it's extraordinarily time consuming, because you have to look up to make sure which pressing you have. You have to be accurate in terms of the condition of the record. You really have to be precise. And anything, like you have to kind of spot check the records to make sure, how do they sound? Are they skipping? Is there any problem with them? And I was extremely diligent about that, to the point that I think only 2 people got back to me saying that there was a problem with the record, and I immediately just refunded them the money. So I always had a perfect rating because I was extraordinarily accurate. Plus, you have to buy the right boxes to send them in, and go to the post office, package everything up, label it. It was turning into a full-time job, and so that was a problem. The money was great, but it was turning into a full-time job. And then what happened was that Congress passed a bill that taxed, I can't remember what the cutoff was before, but it was pretty high. You could sell things online, and the threshold was pretty high before you started paying tax on it. And then what happened was that I think now the threshold is about $750, which is nothing, before you start paying tax. So the problem is that, and all the other people or corporations that get their cuts began like upping the amount of percentage that they wanted. So Discogs, PayPal, plus you're paying taxes. So it became less attractive, I guess. But a friend of a friend on Facebook contacted a record store in Louisville, Kentucky, and he wanted to know what kinds of stuff I had. So I made a short video and I sent it to him, and he's like, I want to buy, like, in bulk. So, you know, he pays, basically record stores pay about a fourth of what they'll sell it for. So I'm getting about a fourth of what I could potentially make, but it helps to kind of like start clearing out my house. And it's a big chunk of money. So even though it's a little depressing, I guess, in the sense that you feel like you're leaving money on the table, again, it's like I'm stockpiling some money for my retirement, and I'm clearing out, I think he bought 3,000 records, and he wants to come back to buy 3,000 more. So all of this sounds good, except for one thing. I don't see any difference in my house. Despite getting rid of stuff, despite boxing things, trying to figure out how to sort, like, what kinds of stuff can I give away? What kinds of stuff can I monetize? What kinds of stuff can I have a garage sale and sell? I'm not seeing much of a difference. And when I get back to the US, I'm going to have 1 year and 4 months to get rid of all this shit. Yeah, so if you're like me and you just, you've accumulated stuff through various marriages and through a lifetime of owning houses, it's going to take a while. And that to me is my biggest mistake so far, is that 9 years ago, when the idea or the possibility or the inkling came to me of the possibility of maybe leaving this country and moving to another country, I didn't wake up the next day and start like throwing stuff away. And I regret that. So don't make the same mistake that I made. Like, get on top of that. All right, thanks for listening, and I will, hopefully I'll be a little bit more on the mend next time. Hopefully my voice will come back, and I will talk to you soon. Okay.